When most folk think of comic books, they think of superheroes. And when they think of superheroes, well, they think of the usual suspects. And while it's great that Joe Public knows who Spider-Man or Wonder Woman is, well, you and I know that those characters are simply the toys at the top of the pile. Indeed, the number of lesser-known heroes dwarfs, well, the others by 1,000 to 1. Since the inception of the comics medium, publishers have produced heroes for every occasion, some grim, some silly, and some simply to cash in. Join me now as we head into the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics archives to unearth some of the weirdest heroes yet. Grab your cereal, your bowl, and your spoon. It's time for breakfast.
Breakfast.
Good morning, and welcome to Comics for Breakfast. I'm your host, Jason Mink. When I got back into comics a decade ago, my approach to the hobby was simple. If it was a book that I'd wanted to read as a kid, well, it was a book that I'd want to read as an adult. After all, the hooks are more or less the same. A compelling situation, some kooky characters to populate it, and an element of mystery or danger. And while these elements are more or less critical, well, specific players are not. I understand that not all stories are appropriate for all characters. If I'm reading a seedy crime tale taking place in a gritty urban environment, I don't want the protagonist to be a squeaky clean do-gooder like Superman, but instead someone who loans himself to the situation like Wildcat or Mike Jones. At the same time, I don't want to be reading some high-minded sci-fi tale just to have the hero turn out to be a shoot first and then shoot again just to be sure character like the Punisher. Now, I'm not saying these characters can't work in these situations, but it feels more organic and satisfying when all the bits just fit together. Sometimes the situations are so strange that a hero needs to be created specifically to fit the bill. Hence, today's 3 Titanic titles. And we begin with this certified oddball, just the sort of book that would pique my interest as a bargain-minded kid. Hey, you weren't just getting one, you were getting 3 new action hero ideas in Charlton Premiere #1. Now, this was published and appeared in September of 1967, and was a bit late to the party when it came to the camp comics inspired by ABC TV's Batman television show. That said, campy it is, beginning with The Shape, like the world's most far-out action hero. In the laboratory of his dilapidated hillside home, Professor Scuba S. Duba exposes a special chemically concocted figurine to alternating beams of superattenuated white and ebonized black light. His pesky but well-meaning nephew, Kevin, interrupts the experiment, and Duba sends the lad off to clean the lab. Later that night, Kevin has had enough of being his uncle's lackey and decides to cut out. In the process of sneaking through the darkened lab, he inadvertently activates his uncle's machine. Both light sources strike the chemical figure at once, the catalyst needed to bring it to startling life. But what is it? Kevin states that it's only a shape, which seems weird. I mean, it looks pretty clearly defined on this end. Maybe the kid needs glasses. Astonishingly, the shape begins to imitate Kevin's speech, quickly picking up the English language. Then, because it's the fun-loving type, it turns into a rubber ball and begins ricocheting around the lab. All the noise wakes the professor, who sees nothing but dollar signs. However, the shape doesn't take to this course of action and runs off. Enraged, the professor reports his creation to the authorities, a move that shocks Kevin. Sure, his uncle has always been difficult, but this is some next-level jerkery. Feeling responsible for the childlike shape, Kevin runs off to help his pal. In the interim, the shape has come upon a set of towers bearing heavy-gauge electrical cables. Coincidentally enough, this very power source is under attack by enemy saboteurs. Mistaking them for potential friends, the shape turns into a giant knife? All right, that's terrifying. He catches a jolt of power from the lines for his trouble, allowing the saboteurs the chance to escape. Kevin appears then. With a little prompting, the shape manages to subdue the two villains. Our heroes race off to the nearby army base to capture the other spies, allowing the story's creative team a chance to show a few of the shape's remarkable transformative powers. In the end, the bad guys are caught, the army base is saved, and Professor Duba drags his errant nephew home. And is that it for the shape? Yes. Mercifully, yes. Next up, it's the titanic teen trio known only as the Tyro Team. And dig those matching turtlenecks. Meet David Swift Scott, John Specs Anders, and Warren Creep Blaine. Clearly not all nicknames are created equal. We join our torrid tale already in progress as three criminal types work over a back alley door. That sounds weird. Only the fellows are not alone, as from behind a trash can peers the creep. Yes, according to his thought balloons, he's been hiding out in dirty alleyways for weeks, ostensibly to catch these guys out, but I don't know. If you answer to the creep, folks are going to make up their own minds about you. Creep sends a telepathic message to the other Tyros who are studying at the EVU library. The fellows put down their pencils and hop in their Thunderbird? Gran Torino GT? Or is it a Mercury Cougar? I'm not a car guy. A little exposition cues us in on the trio's backstory. They're just three ordinary guys who happen to be able to telepathically communicate. Being the civic-minded kids that they are, they've decided to use their powers for good. Specs implores Swift to get it together, but the kid would rather be at home watching Laughing. And I don't blame him. Sock it to me. I love that. The kids strip down to their turtlenecks, so you know things are getting serious. And hey, they have masks, too. That almost makes these superhero costumes, right? The Tyros roll in, tackling the would-be robbers. Creep lays back, being the team's secret weapon, but he's not really needed. Having a telepathic pal is as good as having a set of eyes in the back of your head. Jump back to the EVU campus, where the fellows' dates commiserate. Hey, no one ever said dating the Tyro teens would be easy, baby. Back at the crime scene, the cops have cordoned off the area to let the Tyros finish their fight. As one of the criminals has already run off, it's 2 against 2, which is hardly worth getting worked up about. This is framed as some sort of epic fight, but what we're really seeing is 2 teenage boys wailing on 2 middle-aged men. Is this really worth turning on the TV cameras for? Meanwhile, Creep has tailed the third would-be robber to a shady light post meeting, where he's forced to decide which of the 2 creeps to follow. Elsewhere, the other Tyros wait for their pal's mental summons, with the writer doing his best to generate a little Marvel-style interpersonal drama. When it's clear this is going nowhere, we shift gears back to action. Outside of a tenement building, Creep watches the guy he followed. Wanting more info, he shimmies up a building and listens through an open window. Turns out he followed the wrong guy. Hey, I get it. You can't catch your main antagonist in the first issue, right? Unwilling to take off those turtlenecks until some faces have been punched, the Tyros decide, hell with it, and bust in and start brawling. One of the criminals decides to bolt, giving Creep a chance to dust his knuckles. Having proven himself to be as capable as the other Tyros, you think they'd give him one of those keen gimp masks to wear, but no dice. The trio return to their dorms, each one wrestling with their own hang-up. So what do you think, gang? We're asked if we want to know more, like where the Tyros got their powers and why Creep is, well, such a creep. Based on the fact this was the team's sole appearance, I'm going to say that readers gave this one a big negative Nelly. The Piper Galleries are home to some of the most exquisite art ever crafted by man's hand, curated by our narrator, Crispin X. Crispin, an outgrowth of archaeologist Aaron Piper's failed attempts at translating ancient Etruscan texts. The gallery acts as a home base for Piper and his mysterious alter ego, the terrifying monstrosity of strength known as the Spookman. Having developed a reputation thanks to their gallery, Piper and Crispin are approached to verify the veracity of a potentially ancient statue. Turns out the owner will pay a cool 10 G's if someone can just turn up the head. This is cash the museum could really use, but how to get it? Well, it turns out the mysterious moonstone gives the Spookman his monstrous strength, also has the power of time travel, and before you can say, gee, Mr. Peabody, the two are rocketing back into Romany times. We're treated to this nice image as our two heroes move through the murky, half-glimpsed dimensions of time and space. Moments, or is that an eternity, later, and the pair are in the court of no less than Nero, the Roman emperor. I guess Spooky and his pal think they're invisible as they make a beeline for the statue, but they can be seen clear as anything and are captured toot sweet. Nero, being Nero, decides on a little sport and pits the Spookman against his own champion, the brawny Marco. The two square off, and while Marco gets in a lucky blow with his mace, the Spookman is by far the better fighter. He defeats Nero's champion with ease, earning the Honey of Rome, whatever that means. Probably best not to ask, really. In the end, Crispin trades his Zippo lighter for the statue, an act that has the entirely foreseeable consequence of Nero burning down his empire. Our heroes return to the present, and we end on this wry note. Fair enough, I suppose. Hey, that pipe might have tobacco in it. Written and illustrated by Pat Boyette, the Spookman, along with Tyro Team and The Shape, are in the public domain thanks to a lack of proper copyright notice, so independent creators, take note. Next up, previously we've covered Silver Age, Harvey Comics heroes Jigsaw, Spyman, and Piranha, and they were all decidedly weird. In that spirit, we present the chillest hero this side of a pre-thawed Steve Rogers. It could only be Jack Q. Frost. And if that seems like a pointed reference, well, there's a good reason, as we'll soon see. Now, this is Unearthly Spectaculars number 2, featuring Jack's awe-inspiring origin. He's billed as the coolest hero in comics, which is a cute pun, but, well, a rather high bar to set for yourself as a publisher. A miniaturized satellite beams a warning to the planet below. This is the work of Lord Lazy, a self-styled supervillain in the campy 60s vein. He directs the attention of the powers that be to the Panama Canal, which he has pledged to destroy. He even puts off his meal, instead barking orders to a robotic minion waiting in the jungles of Nicaragua. With a word, the mechanical marvel is launched into the air, only to plummet headfirst into the locks below. Having made good on his word, Lazy declares his terms: worldwide surrender or destruction at his pudgy hands. And while the talking heads in Washington debate on their new course of action, we smash cut to the Arctic Circle, where atomic tests are being conducted. After bombing an iceberg, the crew of a nearby sub get the surprise of their lives when a frosty stranger appears and beckons them from the ice floe. We're told the sailors mistake the figure for the legendary Jack Frost, which is a bit puzzling. It's one thing to think you've run up on Santa Claus or a Yeti, but was Jack Frost a character anyone seriously believed in? The mysterious man is helped on board, and slowly the mystery is unraveled. We learn that he is Secret Agent James Flynn, recently kicked out of a plane high over the frigid ocean. Somehow, he survived being frozen in an iceberg, which is damned lazy writing. I'm reading a comic book here. Make up a reason. It's your job. The ship's crew helpfully theorized the atomic explosion has not only revived Flynn, but given him strange powers as well. The icy agent is taken inside the ship, where he encounters the familiar voice of his previous commanding officer in the ICA. Then the two take a trip down nostalgia lane, as Flynn recounts how he got his training, his failures, and receiving his atomic-powered supersuit. It's got all the stuff you'd expect. Radar detector, electronic gun, miniature atomic propulsion unit. It's pretty much your standard kit. Using the TV projector in his pants, Jim is briefed on his first assignment: subdue the enemy agents setting up a missile base at the North Pole. Simple enough, but Flynn whizzes it down his leg, getting captured pretty much immediately, then tossed out of a jet as an afterthought. Now thawed out in the ship's boiler room, the powers that be try and decide just what to do with Flynn. In the end, it's decided to just give the guy his job back and put him to work. I guess they're short-staffed. The team is scrambled to the heart of the city, where Lord Lazy's robotic minions rob an armored car. However, as soon as Flynn touches down, he folds like a card table. Instinctively, he makes his way to a frozen food plant where, with the aid of a fire hose and an industrial freezer, he once again ices up. With that, our Sub-Zero hero springs into action. Flynn is able to defeat the robots by freezing the oil in their bearings. Lord Lazy, watching from his hidden lair, decides to up his game and sends in a new player via parachute. And hey, this one spits fire. The two play tag for a bit before Flynn pulls the stick out and freezes the ground, sending the mechanical marvel sprawling. Once down, he finishes it off by encasing it in a thick coating of ice, thwarting its firepower. This really gets Lazy's goat, and he dispatches another robot, this time one in his own likeness. It seems needlessly complicated, but hey, I'm less a narcissist and more a misanthrope, so more power to him, I guess. Meanwhile, back at ICA headquarters, Flynn poses coquettishly on a block of ice. He and his boss kick around some theories, but happily, they don't need to think too hard. Lazy's robot has just attacked a nearby smelting plant. Boy, this guy is all over the map, isn't he? Flynn runs in and confronts this new menace, which he instantly identifies as a robot. So what's the point of disguising it again? Lazy's robot doesn't allow us to dwell on it, instead dumping a smelter full of molten metal at Flynn's feet. As this is apparently the slow-moving kind of molten metal, Flynn manages an unlikely save. The issue ends with Lord Lazy ranting, and who could blame him? He was just beaten by a guy who runs around calling himself Jack You Frost. But that's not all. Hey, this is a Harvey giant-sized comic, and it's packed with this sort of oddballery. And while we don't have time to look at all of the stories, we can look in on a character that I've been dying to read about since I saw his comic in the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics Facebook group. It's Tiger Boy, the boy who hates us all. A robbery in broad daylight catches the attention of seemingly normal teen Paul Canfield. In spite of his promise to his mother, the boy realizes he cannot stand by and do nothing. Then the unthinkable occurs, with Paul transforming into Tiger Boy. The bank robbers are understandably shaken at this latest development, in shock, wrecking their getaway car. Tiger Boy circles the vehicle, preparing to pounce, but one of the bank robbers whips out a Tommy gun and sprays the street with lead. And while Tiger Boy has no defense against bullets, Steel Man can eat them. Now a towering robot, the team begins pulling the cons out of the upturned car like taffy, but there are 4 of them, and he only has 2 arms. What to do? Well, before you know it, Rubberman has taken the place of his previous steely incarnation. The cops can only watch slack-jawed as this lanky lad collars the criminals and legs it out of there. Returning home, Paul discovers his parents have assumed their true form as Venusians. Ah! Call the Orchid Man. They explain to their son that not all Earthlings are bad, and if he'll promise to rein in on the hating of everybody, why, they'll let him use his remarkable powers to help out from time to time. Paul is overjoyed at the prospect, but I gotta wonder, is this really about helping people, or more about throwing your weight around? I don't know. I'm not sure about this kid's motivations. His parents warn Paul that if he ever finds his long-lost sister, she could negate his remarkable powers, a warning Paul promptly dismisses. You know, you just can't talk to some tiger boys. In spite of Harvey's best efforts, their Silver Age superheroes line never caught fire. It quickly became clear that the safe money remained in millionaire children, friendly ghosts, and learning-impaired giants, with the Harvey heroes being consigned to the quarter boxes. That said, they make for an interesting footnote in comics history from a time where publishers were willing to take chances in a bid to expand their market share. Speaking of market share, some companies didn't seem content with the already sizable chunk they were already carving out of the comics pie. Case in point, MLJ and the heroes of Archie Comics. And no, that's not the Archies as superheroes, which MLJ also did. Believe me, the company never met an idea it couldn't get 6 titles out of. No, these are the Red Circle heroes, featuring characters like the Fly, the Black Hood, and the Fox. Who? Yeah, pretty much. Now, I guess you just had to be there or lucky enough to find the comics somewhere after the fact. I know I certainly didn't see them until well into my 30s. So, are these comics forgotten classics, or are they best left in the bins? Let's take a look. Unquestionably, the company's best-known non-teen asset, the Shield, is MLJ's patriotic hero, who predated the creation of Captain America by several months. Our story begins with action, with the Shield grappling with no less than the Amoeba Man. Who? Only the latest creation of the evil organization known as Peril, that's who. So why is this battle the most unexpected Shield tale of them all? Let's read on. Our story begins in the offices of the Zenith Employment Agency, where owner Nancy is talking her unemployed boyfriend Bill into a kooky scheme. Put on the costume of legendary superhero the Shield to pass out flyers and drum up some publicity for a new toy store. The costume fits like a glove, mostly because Bill secretly is the Shield, following in the footsteps of his legendary hero father. The pair head off to a toy shop, but on the way, some 2-bit punk decides to make his bones by drilling the legendary hero in broad daylight. This is nothing a well-thrown trash can can't remedy, but it raises the larger point. Walking around in that outfit creates a public safety hazard. In spite of this, the headstrong Bill refuses to take it off. After all, what use is dignity when his wallet is flatter than a pancake? With this flimsy rationale in place, we cut away to Peril HQ, where these costume miscreants plot revenge on the Shield, with the help of their latest monstroid. Oh, sure, he doesn't look like much right now, but I'll have you know his every erg of energy is devoted to the complete and total destruction of the Shield. The Amoeba Man is here. Well, at least until he's there, beamed across town to where Bill and Nancy are handing out their flyers. But, unlike those milksops Peter Parker or Clark Kent, Bill doesn't play chicken when danger appears, but instead steps to the plate and swings for the fences. This raises the question, is Bill's joblessness simply a clever ploy to keep his alter ego a secret? If so, it seems needlessly manipulative. Superhero or not Bill, nobody likes a fibber. To his shock, the Shield discovers his new foe is elastic in nature, able to weather his strongest blows with no consequence. Worse still, the Amoeba Man has somehow absorbed the Shield's great strength. Amoeba can do that, right? Now powerless, Bill is carted below the Earth's surface, then dumped like a sack of cat litter into the metal sphere, which is launched into orbit. The gloating peril scientists explain Bill's fate: slow death in a capsule with no food or water. Oh, sure, they could cut off his air supply and kill him immediately, but instead they prefer to savor their foe's slow death. Archie Comics, folks. Taunted by films of his past battles, Bill lashes out once again at the Amoeba Man, but it's a futile gesture. He remains powerless, and it's clear he's not going to be able to think his way out. Looks like it's curtains for this legacy hero. Meanwhile, back at Peril headquarters, supervillain the Wizard unexpectedly appears. He takes umbrage with the impertinence of these clowns. Why, if anyone's going to kill his archenemy, it's going to be him. With the flip of a switch, the satellite breaks orbit and plummets back to Earth. Stepping out of the craft, Bill reflects on just how nice it is to be back on terra firma, but his reverie is broken by the Wiz, eager to take credit. The Shield leaps into action, but the nearby Amoeba Man grapples with him. Using an unexpected judo move, the Shield tosses Amoeba Man at the Wizard, knocking them both into a nearby chasm. And then he just leaves. No waiting to see if they climb out or heroic rescue for these villains. Nary a tear is shed as Bill works his way back home. And here's Nancy, patiently waiting in the spot where Bill was abducted. Lady, don't you have a business to run? She again pleads with her lunkhead boyfriend to take off the costume, but Bill refuses. He's going to finish passing out those toy store flyers no matter what. Is it as simple as a matter of misplaced pride or some deeper psychosis on the part of this lying, murdering sociopath? Buy the next issue and find out, kids. While not as unsuccessful as the other two efforts that we've looked at today, Archie's heroes really only managed to limp along for a few years. That said, MLJ refused to say die, and in the following decades, the company has reintroduced these characters at least 3 times. The Tyro Team only wish they'd had that many chances. In spite of this repeated effort, well, this is another gang of heroes that simply can't defeat the all-powerful enemy of publishers everywhere, reader apathy. That said, if you like comics that put the emphasis on fun ahead of sensible storytelling or boilerplate drama, well, then you might just get a kick out of these. Weird heroes. They're everywhere if you just take a look. And hey, that's a good thing. While they might not attain the recognition of Marvel or DC creations, it's heartening to know that they exist. After all, if you fall out a window, chances are Spider-Man is going to be too busy to save you. But the Shape? Well, he's just happy to help out. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider purchasing a t-shirt, a mug, or one of the only other fine items that you can buy in the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics Facebook group. All proceeds go towards creating the content that you can only find here on the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics network. I'm Jason Mink, and I hope to see you next week at breakfast.